Thanks so much for coming tonight. Yeah, I'm going to be speaking for just a few minutes about what a circular economy is and why the circular economy bill, which has just been introduced in Scotland, is such a big opportunity. Um, I am going to share my screen, so hopefully you can all see the slides. It, is that coming through for everyone? Yeah, great. Okay, I'm getting some nods. Okay, brilliant. Okay, so I thought I'd start by talking about what a circular economy is. It's one of those words that can be a bit jargony to some people, and also it's something that has been taken over a bit by corporations recently, and it's becoming quite a greenwashy term as well. So what we mean when we talk about circular economy is maybe different to what others mean. So Kate has just given us a really good demonstration of the type of the way that we use materials in our economy at the moment, which is the exact opposite of a circular economy. So in rich countries, we have materials that are extracted from the planet, they're made into stuff, they're transported over to us and we use them and then we throw them away, sometimes after a single use or using it for a few seconds. And then it maybe gets buried or burned or exported to somewhere else to be dealt with. In a circular economy, for the whole economy, we make sure that we don't use more resources than we need. And when we do use resources, we reuse them as many times as possible. And then when they come to the end of their life, we recycle as much as possible as well. There is a direct correlation between the resources that we use and the impact that it has on the planet. So the more stuff that we use, the more it exacerbates social injustice, climate change, and ecological collapse as well. So creating a circular economy is essential to creating a fairer and more sustainable Scotland. Unfortunately, our current progress in Scotland towards a circular economy is pretty terrible. Just to give you a few examples, we are missing our recycling rate targets. So our target for 2025 is to be recycling 70% of our material. We've been stuck at about 43% recycling for the last decade. So we're making no progress whatsoever towards that target. Scotland introduced a single-use plastics ban for some types of plastics last year, but that's not really been enforced very well. And there were plans to create a deposit return scheme for drinks containers in Scotland, but that has been delayed several times now. So all of this means that in Scotland, we're using far too much materials. In fact, in Scotland, we use, on average, 19 tons of materials per person every year. And that is more than double the sustainable limit that's being calculated by experts. So we know that we're not doing enough and that we need to be far more sustainable. Now, one of the things that Kate mentioned was that it's not just about individual change, and that's true. What we really need is system change. So we need governments to make sure that they take account of materials when they're making policies. We need producers to make sure to be forced to make sure that their products that they put on our shelves last longer and that they can be repaired and that they aren't wrapped in tons of packaging. And we need more support for reuse organisations and proper recycling services as well. The circular economy bill is a real opportunity to change this. So earlier this year, the Scottish Government proposed a new law, the circular economy bill, which it introduced to the Scottish Parliament. And its aim with this is to create a framework which can then be used to create a circular economy in Scotland. The bill will now go through the Scottish Parliament, where our MSPs will be able to scrutinise it and vote on changes to the draft bill. And that will be done in 3 stages. So when Parliament come back from their summer break, we'll go into stage 1 of the bill process. So at that point, we'll be trying to raise awareness about the circular economy. When we get to stage 2, that's when the bill goes to a committee who's focused on the particular agenda of whatever bill is being looked at. In this case, the circular economy bill will go to the net zero committee, where the MSPs that sit on that committee will look at the bill in detail and go through it line by line. So that's an opportunity for us to focus on those committee members and maybe get some more kind of technical changes into the bill. And then the 3rd stage of the bill is the final stage, and that will probably be coming around spring, summer next year. The timelines are quite fluid at the moment, and that's our opportunity to get any amendments in and have a big push on the things that we think are most important to get into the bill, because at that point any MSPs can make amendments to the bill, and then those get voted on. So that's the process that Friends of the Earth Scotland will be campaigning around, and we want to make the bill as strong as possible. So there are 4 changes that we think are the priorities for the bill. So firstly, we want to see the introduction of consumption reduction targets to make sure we get that 19 tonnes down to 8 tonnes in a reasonable time frame. And then we also want to see a global just transition at the heart of Scotland's circular economy approach, because we know that this is going to affect jobs and people all across the world. And then we want to see some independent scrutiny of the bill to make sure that the progress the Scottish Government say they're making is real progress. And then we also need to see some policies around high quality reuse and recycling services for everyone, making sure that the bill includes that as well. So that's a really short introduction to the bill and why it's important. I'm going to be handing over now to our speakers. Kate has already introduced everyone. What we wanted to do tonight was make sure that we gave you speakers from a range of different backgrounds who so we have a couple of people who are going to speak about the problems created by our overconsumption in Scotland, and then also we want to talk a bit about the solutions in Scotland for how we create a circular economy here as well. So we've got speakers that cover that range. First of all, we have Edmond Kangamungazi from Caritas in Zambia. So Edmond, I'm going to pass over to you. I've got your slides, so I'll just try and share those as well.
Here is Edmond.
Good evening, everyone. So my name is Edmond Kangamungazi. Coming from Caritas Zambia, and I'll be giving you a synopsis of the impacts of mining on communities as we're talking about issues of transitional energy and some of the minerals that we are actually consuming, where they're coming from and what kind of impact or footprint they're actually leaving in the communities or in our countries. Maybe going to what Caritas Zambia is all about. We can go to the next slide. So Caritas Zambia is a faith-based organization which is under the Zambia Conference of Catholic Bishops. So we basically we are a department under the Conference of Catholic Bishops, which we look at issues of social and economic justice issues. And our vision is basically to ensure that every person attains integral human development. In this case, we're looking at how do we ensure that a person attains the spiritual development. Not only that, also looking at issues of material development. So to do that, we have 4 programs that look at that. First of all is the economic and social accountability, which basically looks at how do we ensure that the economic policies and public resources are being used prudently. Then we also look at one program which is looking at democracy and governance, which look at issues of constitutionalism and issues of how do we ensure that our members of parliament that we elect are being responsible. Then we also have a program which looks at issues of livelihood, climate change adaptation. Now that we're talking about issues of climate change, we talk about how do we as a country respond to that, and how do we actually adapt, ensure that our communities and everyone else is adapting to that. Then also the last program is looking at issues of conflict transformation and peace building. In all this process of development, we always have conflict, but how do we ensure that we have peace in our country? So now going back to what we're talking about, maybe the next slide, is what does mining look like in Zambia? So Zambia is one of the homes of the world's largest source of copper. We have been mining copper for almost 80 years now, in terms of exploitation and management. And we have both large scale and small scale mining in the country. And almost all the provinces, all the districts now, we find a mining activity happening there. And if you look at Zambia itself, we're looking at about 70% of our total exports are coming from mining. So we normally say if the mining sector sneezes, the whole economy catches a flu. And over the years, I think Zambia now, we are really dependent on issues of mining. We can't do without mining. So if you look at 80% of our Zambia revenue comes from mining itself. So if you look at between 2000 and to date, mining production has increased almost like 300%. Next slide, please. So if you look at mining itself, that's a map of Zambia. So all where you see green, that's an active mining license. Where you see blue, someone is exploring. So looking at almost everywhere, you see mining activities. As early as 2000, we had about 1,118 mining licenses that were given out for people to actually explore different minerals. Next slide, please. So not only do we have hydrocarbons, Zambia now is actually exploring for oil. So what you're seeing there on your left is the different blocks that have been actually sold in the country where people are actually exploring for oil. And the other one map, which is just the bigger one, this is where you see the different mineral deposits are in the country. And now that we're talking about issues of transitional energy, it can actually tell you where you can actually find those particular minerals. Talking about manganese, talking about tin, nickel. So all those occurrences are actually found in Zambia, and people are actually exploring those particular minerals. Next slide, please. So in as much as we talk about all these minerals and the beauty that comes with the minerals, if you look at the impact that they have on the country, it's quite massive. That's a group of people actually mining minerals in the southern part of the country, and they're mining tungsten. And this is the mineral that we actually use for, I'm sure by now, this is almost 19 hours, your light bulbs are on. So that's a mineral, that's the element that they use in terms of making bulbs. So, and that's where the mineral is coming from. So if you look at Zambia itself, so those men and women there, they're actually mining that particular mineral, and they're selling it for about $7 per kg. But of course, if you look at the international market itself, that mineral fetches to about between $50 to about $2,500. But the amount that they get it from Zambia, it's almost like nothing. And you find that these people are mining this mineral without any particular protective clothing. If you look at the women themselves, you actually find a lot of women actually mining that particular mineral. So for them, you find that where these minerals are being exploited, you find a lot of human violations are actually happening there. As you can see, maybe you can go to the next slide. So you find that there is a lot of environmental impacts on these particular places where they're getting these particular minerals. We find that a lot of women, if you look at those particular areas, when mining starts taking place, those lands are actually destroyed. You cannot do agriculture anymore. Water bodies are actually destroyed. You find that now most of the water bodies, they become polluted. Land is cleared, and where you find a lot of trees have actually been cut off. And now we're talking about issues of climate change. And this is where now we're supposed to be issues of protecting the trees and the forest. But because now we're talking about how do we harvest all these minerals, we find that people are cutting down the trees, water bodies are being destroyed, land environment is actually being destroyed. So we also find a lot of elements of air pollution, soil contamination, destruction of vegetation and wildlife habitat due to people actually trying to mine these particular minerals. So these pictures were actually got about 2 months ago. This is in Eastern Province. Next slide, please. So now, as we're talking about issues of lithium, I'm sure everyone now talks about lithium and transitional energy, where we're talking about we need to use a lot of batteries. We need to stop using gas and oil. And we need to also look at, and we're talking about issues of just transitional energy. But if you come to places like Southern Province or Zambia, there's no such thing as transitional energy, because this is where the mineral lithium is actually being mined. And they're leaving quite trenches of holes where these minerals are being mined. In terms of communities have been displaced, villages have been disbandoned, trees have been cut. So if you look at the impact that they have on issues of environment, they're quite massive. Yet we're talking about issues of transitional energy. And as it is now, we're talking about lithium per kg is being sold about 0.14 cents per kg. But if you look at the international market, of course, it's quite huge. The price of what they're getting for and what they're being sold for, the difference is huge. So, and in terms of environmental impact, I think you can see it for yourselves. These pictures were, of course, gotten in as early as June this year. And that is me trying to pose in where they're actually getting the minerals themselves. Next slide, please. This is in Southern Province again. This is where we get tin mining. And these are the minerals that we are consuming. And this is where they're actually coming from. If you look at the holes, the environmental degradation that they're causing, how women are actually suffering to actually get those particular things. And we're talking about more than 100 households or villages actually being displaced from their communities because these minerals have to be extracted. Next slide, please. Even just the social dimension, we talk about how traditions and cultures have been lost because people are being told to displace. And now I think there's a mixture of different cultures. We find that languages now are actually being they're becoming extinct. Some cultures are being lost. Women more especially, I think they are suffering, they're getting the brunt of issues of mining. We have a lot of unpaid labor when it comes to issues of mining. There's a lot of human rights violation when it comes to this. As you can see, the women there don't have even shoes to actually, as they're mining, they don't have any protective clothing as they're mining. So just basic, and in terms of the tools they use for mining, I think you're just basically using little holes, picks that they're actually using, not any industrial equipment they're actually using. Next slide. I'm giving an example. This is one community that was displaced in 2005 by one of the biggest mining companies. They mine copper and cobalt, copper and gold. This is where in 2005, 42 families were actually displaced. And these were communities that were told they'll build schools, they'll build hospitals for them, they'll build new houses for them. But it took almost 5 years for that community to actually see a school and a hospital. Unfortunately, new houses were never built for them. They just gave them asbestos. But if you look at how many children lost school time in 7 years, that's a lot. And the livelihoods that these people used to enjoy was actually, these were farmers, they were doing livestock, they were doing agriculture, they were displaced, and now they were being told they're taken into places where they cannot do farming. So a lot of livelihoods have been shut. A lot of cultures and people have lost education time. Children have lost their ways. And so, and all because someone needs a lot of copper, someone needs gold out there. So in terms of what has been the impact on this community is quite devastating. Next slide, please. So this is, I'm giving just an example of a contract of a mine company in Northwestern Province. This is where communities, as you can see, they're using thumbprints because these communities can't read. So they're given contracts to actually sign on to them. And these communities were given as much as $100 to give up their land, which they have lived probably 20, 30 years. And they're being told you need to move out of this land, and they're given $100 for it. And so their livelihoods literally have to change over $100, and because someone has to mine copper and cobalt in that particular mine or agriculture fields. Next slide, please. This is a community, again, they're being displaced and then being told you cannot rehabilitate, you cannot, if your household or your house has been blown up by wind or the rains, you cannot renovate it. And this is the greens. This is once upon a time, this was a toilet, latrine, and the communities could not renovate it because the community, they were told, if you do that, your family will not be able to enjoy employment. None of your family members will be employed. So now you find someone has to go and relieve himself over that. There's no shelter, there's nothing. And this is how we are dehumanizing local communities because of our minerals that we're actually consuming. Next slide, please. Even that, we talk about issues of water pollution because of the different extraction methods that are being used in these particular communities. The communities cannot use the water directly, so they have to extract the, if you use water directly, it starts itching on your body. So they have to get the bark of trees and put the bark of trees in the water so that the trees suck out that poison. That's the time the water can actually be used. Next slide, please. So if you drink the water as it is, you're going to have serious stomach upsets. So this is another community that we see that this was an agriculture community. So this is the vegetation, the vegetables, they used to grow cabbages, and this was the livelihood. But because we needed to get tin, we need to get lithium, we're told the communities, we need to move out of these particular communities. So now they cannot do agriculture. So they become peasants and become poorer and poorer because now they can't do any agriculture. Next slide, please. So we just don't so in terms of our work, we do gather information, we do a lot of researches. So all those pictures that you're seeing, this is out of the researches that have done in terms of trying to look at the different impacts that these minerals that we're consuming, in terms of what are the impacts on environmental impacts on the communities, what are the micro. So these are the difference in terms of also do the registration analysis. So these are different researches that we have done just to inform us in terms of what are kind of the impact that these minerals that they're having on, or mining is having on our communities. Next slide. So what has been some of the lessons learned? Mining, in as much for every kg of minerals that we actually consume, or everything that we have now, even the computer that I'm looking at now, to extract that mineral, a lot of people have lost their lives, they have lost their dreams, they have lost their lives, they have lost their loved ones. We talk about issues of pollution. A lot of people have died because of pollution of where we're mining. A lot of people have been told to move out of the land that they have been there for many, many years. And unfortunately, what we have seen is that in many times, we find that the government and the mining companies are actually together, and communities are normally left alone. We find that they have to fight their battles alone, and which is very disheartening. And unfortunately, we have not learned anything, and we have not learned to learn over the past year. Zambia has been mining for 8 years, and we haven't really learned a lot. And we keep on doing the same mistakes, displacing communities, polluting our lands. Now we're talking about issues of transitional energy. Everybody's campaigning for transition, getting, where do we get this lithium, where do we get tin, where do we get nickel, where do we get cobalt, where do we get manganese? In as much as we're talking about transitional energy, the impact where these minerals are actually being gotten, they're actually lands are being degraded and everything else. So yeah, so that's my presentation. So thank you very much. I hope I've done 15 minutes.
Thank you so much, Edmond. That was a really interesting presentation. You really kind of brought home the scale of what's happening in Zambia, and the impact that it's having on people and communities there. Yeah, thank you so much for that. We are now going to move on to our next speakers. So we have Helena and Andrea from Resist Glencore. Helena is going to be translating for Andrea. I'm going to pass over to them now.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having us. Yeah, my name is Helena. I'm from Resist Glencore. I'm currently in Colombia. Just so I briefly say a little bit about our campaign. So we're a growing network of people, mainly in Colombia, the UK, France, and Germany, who stand in solidarity with communities that are resisting against Glencore, particularly in Colombia. We resist against Glencore because this is the biggest metal and mineral extraction corporation in the whole world. Its headquarters are located in Europe, so in Switzerland and in the UK. And what we're trying to do is to build bridges between the global north and the global south, to amplify the voices of these communities that are facing neo-colonial extractivism. So corporations like Glencore are currently standing with over $27 billion of profit every year at the cost of communities' lives and planetary lives. So yeah, they trade in metals, minerals, as well as coal and oil, and they currently hold the biggest open coal mine in all of South America, which is in the Guajira in Colombia. So yeah, now I want to introduce my colleague, Andrea from Tierra Digna, who I'm going to be translating for. Listo, compa, cuando esté lista.
¿Me escuchas ahí?
Sí, te escucho.
Bueno, buenos días a todos y todas aquí desde Colombia. ¿Cómo están?
So good evening to everyone here in Colombia. I hope you're doing well.
Bueno, nosotros somos el Centro de Estudios para la Justicia Social Tierra Digna. Somos una ONG que ya lleva 12 años aproximadamente acompañando comunidades afectadas por minería, especialmente de carbón y de oro en el país. Y esta foto que ustedes están viendo es precisamente una de las minas de la empresa Glencore, que está en proceso de cierre y de transición energética en este momento.
So we are an NGO that has been in place for over 12 years, and we work in particular with many communities that are affected, especially of extraction of gold, as well as coal and other metals in the country. And this, what you're seeing right now, this image, is one of the mines which currently stands in form of transition right now.
Precisamente cuando nos hicieron esta invitación, analizábamos con Helena y con el equipo de Tierra Digna cómo transmitirles a ustedes 3 mensajes específicos sobre la transición justa, las economías circulares y lo que significa estos cierres mineros en países como Colombia. Recuerden que Colombia y Chile somos los primeros países de la región latinoamericana que estamos haciendo procesos de transición y cierres mineros.
So we have been thinking about how to deliver this message to you about what it means for us to talk about a just transition and the closure of mining operations. We think it's important to deliver 3 key messages in this presentation, and for you to take into account that currently Colombia and Chile are the main countries in Latin America who are going in a process of transition.
Precisamente sobre la transición, Colombia está viviendo el primer piloto del país, que es a partir del cierre de minas de carbón. Este cierre, como ya lo comentaba Helena, se hizo por una inadecuada explotación y un inadecuado proceso de devolución de minas o de títulos y un cierre anticipado de las mismas. Aunque fue un episodio y todavía sigue siendo algo que ha generado muchos impactos, esto ha generado el primer piloto de transición energética justa en el país.
So currently, right now, in Colombia, there is going the first pilot operation of the closure of a mine of coal such as this one. And as Elena mentioned before, it's about like an inadequate exploitation with a lot of very damaging impacts in the land and communities, but this is regardless the first pilot of a transition.
Precisamente el primer mensaje que tenemos para ustedes y como organizaciones ambientales y activistas a nivel internacional, lo primero es decirles que en nuestros países todavía no existe un concepto de transición justa desde los territorios. La transición es un debate que empezó en países europeos, pero en países como los nuestros, donde somos productores de carbón, en este caso, no se ha construido una política de transición justa desde las comunidades. Ese es el primer reto que estamos enfrentando.
So the first message that I want to deliver is that in our context, in our country, we do not yet have an idea, like we do not yet have a real concept of a just transition from the communities and from the territories. This does not exist. This concept of a just transition began to be spoken about in European countries. And so that is the first key message, that in places like Colombia, a just transition is not yet to be seen.
El segundo elemento central es que nosotros como sociedad civil, las comunidades indígenas, afrodescendientes, campesinas de las zonas mineras, pedimos una transición justa desde el territorio. ¿Eso qué significa? Que las comunidades en esta oportunidad tengan la oportunidad de construir proyectos y propuestas de economías propias, desde visiones como la economía circular, los derechos de la naturaleza, y además de eso, una economía en donde el centro no sean las corporaciones extractivas, sino las comunidades mismas.
Sorry, one sec. So the second message is that from the civil society and the communities that we work with, which are communities like indigenous communities, peasant communities, Black communities, and other communities that are in resistance from the territories, is that we want the just transition to come from the territories and the communities themselves. These communities have their own autonomous ways of economy, and the central message is that these messages of a just transition don't come from the corporations, and the corporations are not the ones that decide what a just transition means, but it is from the communities themselves.
Sobre este segundo punto, las comunidades, nosotros, las organizaciones, hemos construido propuestas de economías circulares, basadas también en el cuidado de la naturaleza. Sin embargo, actualmente, como no hay una visión de transición justa desde los territorios, nos estamos enfrentando también a un obstáculo, y es que los gobiernos, así nuestro gobierno sea de izquierda, están implementando de nuevo políticas corporativas y extractivas en el mismo proceso de transición verde que ahora se le está llamando.
And in this second point, something important to say is that these communities have their own propositions of circular economies and their own propositions of a just transition. What happens is that to think of a just transition within these territories, the governments are not granting the communities these opportunities, even though right now in Colombia we have progressive government, the governments are still taking on the political guidance of the corporations and not the communities.
Les voy a contar un único ejemplo. En la zona minera de Cesar, donde se está haciendo el cierre de 2 minas de la empresa Glencore, nosotros como organizaciones, como comunidades, estamos proponiendo que la sustitución de esa economía extractiva sea una economía comunitaria, circular y ambientalmente responsable y basada en los derechos de la naturaleza. Sin embargo, actualmente se está proponiendo una...
Un segundo.
Dale.
So, for example, one of a very beautiful example of these propositions is in the example of a territory in Colombia called El Cesar. Here, there is currently the process of the closure of 2 mines of Glencore, and what the communities and the people in the territories are proposing is their own economies, which are circular, communitarian, and abide by the rights of nature. However,
en este momento, el gobierno colombiano y también gobiernos como Alemania están proponiendo la sustitución del extractivismo a otro modelo extractivo, como lo es la producción de hidrógeno.
Yeah, however, right now, governments in Colombia, as well as governments in Germany that are taking on this transition, are proposing to move from one extractivist model to another extractivist model, proposing false solutions such as green hydrogen.
Es en este tema que queremos plantearles el debate a las organizaciones. ¿Qué significa energías limpias? ¿Y qué significa transición real en países en donde hemos enfrentado el extractivismo corporativo? Aquí es donde los invitamos a reflexionar.
And this is therefore the debate that we want to propose to you, is the debate of really asking ourselves, what are clean energies and what does a real transition mean? And this is the question that we want to pose and discuss with you.
Este territorio no tiene agua actualmente. El hidrógeno verde usará grandes cantidades de agua para ser producido. ¿Cuál va a ser el cambio? Es la pregunta que nos hacemos. Miren, hoy para ustedes queremos dejarles esta pregunta desde Tierra Digna, y es cómo logramos las organizaciones ambientales posicionar las economías propias de las comunidades como una alternativa de sustitución global. La transición no puede ser pasar de un extractivismo de fósil a un extractivismo verde. Tenemos que cambiar los modelos. Tenemos que cambiar el modelo económico y el modelo de consumo. Y en algunas áreas del mundo, detener un poco la extracción como tal y proteger los recursos naturales. Esa es nuestra reflexión. Quisiera hoy acompañarlos más tiempo. Sé que no tenemos más, pero Helena, yo sé que ahorita nos va a complementar un poco esta intervención contando qué hemos hecho para resistir a este proceso.
Gracias. So the reality that is being faced right now is that in the territories there is no water, and to create this alternative of what they call, well, quote unquote alternative of green hydrogen, vast amounts of water are needed to do this. So the question is, what is the real change? So from Tierra Digna and what we want to position and what we want to invite you all to accompany us in positioning is the own communities, the own autonomous communities, economies, the own autonomous economies of these communities, so that extractivism doesn't just pass from fossil fuel extractivism to green extractivism, which is what is happening right now. And in that way, what we propose is that we need systematic change. We need to change the current economic model that is based on consumerism to put a stop on the vast amount of extraction and plunder. And with this, Andrea is saying goodbye. She has to go. But so yeah, thank you so much, Andrea. Muchas gracias. And I will just finish as well complementing with ways that we can continue to support these communities. ¿Quieres decir algo más? ¿O ya?
No, muchísimas gracias. Lamentamos no poderlos acompañar más tiempo. Estábamos agendados hasta las 2 de la tarde, pero de verdad queremos dejar esta pregunta a todos y yo aspiro que, Helena, tú les sigas contando qué hemos hecho para pueblos indígenas, afro, campesinos, para enfrentar esto que es este proceso de transición que no está siendo justo.
Listo, muchas gracias, chao. So Andrea has to leave right now. But yeah, so to finish, to talk a bit more about this alliance between Tierra Digna and Resist Glencore, for example. So yeah, we've been working with a lot of communities that are resisting in Colombia. Particularly, we've been working with the Yucpa indigenous community, which is also in the territory of El Cesar, who is currently one of the main forces of resistance. They just did a tour in 5 European countries in June with the campaign. And what we seek is to amplify their voices. So if I may, there is one call to action that I would like to propose. Well, there is a letter that has been written by the Yucpa authorities, because this indigenous community, because of the extractivism of corporations like Glencore and Drummond, are currently in, according to the Colombian Constitutional Court, in imminent risk of extinction, physical and cultural extinction. So this is a letter that I will forward to you. Maybe should I do it in the chats? Yeah, this letter was written by Luis Uribe and Juan Pablo Gutierrez, who are 2 Yucpa authorities. And this letter we're looking to deliver it to the Colombian embassy in the UK, as well as 5 other countries in Europe. And we're looking for different organizations, activists, politicians, to sign this letter to demand that the Yucpa indigenous ancestral territory is recognized by the Colombian government. So please feel free to read it. And yeah, feel free to also, I'm going to put my email. And the second action point that I would like to talk about, if possible, would be to also call for international solidarity and support in the defense and protection of these communities, because currently, as Andrea was saying, working with 13 different communities in resistance, most of the leaders of these communities are facing death threats because of the resistance. So we're making a call of international solidarity and amplification of this. I hope that, yeah, if you're interested in doing this and in making alliances, I'm going to send my email as well on the chat. And yeah, thank you so much for listening and for being open in the solidarity. And thank you so much for Friends of the Earth for inviting us and giving us this space.
Thank you so much to both of you, Helena and Andrea. That was a really powerful presentation and an important reminder that a just transition can't be achieved without the communities who are most effective at the heart of that process. And we do take on board Andrea's question of what a real just transition means, and we hope that this circular economy bill is an opportunity to make sure that we don't replace one social and environmental crisis with another. If anyone wants to read more about this subject, Friends of the Earth Scotland have published a report recently on transition minerals and Scotland's role in reducing our consumption of these materials. I'll put the link in the chat in a second. Thank you very much again, Helena. And we'll now move on to our third speaker, who is Chris Strachan from the Glasgow Tool Library. Tool libraries are one of those examples of a solution to the overconsumption crisis we have in Scotland, and we need many more solutions like this if we're going to create a circular economy in Scotland. Chris, I can see your slides already. It looks like you're ready to go, so I will hand over to you now.
Yeah, thanks very much for inviting me to speak today. Thanks very much to the speakers so far. And yeah, my name is Chris Strachan. I'm one of the co-founders of the Glasgow Tool Library. So I'm going to talk today a bit about what we do, why we do it, and relating that a bit to some of the challenges we're currently facing and how that relates to the circular economy bill and some of the things we'd like to see in it as well. Here we go. So I thought I'd start talking about the Instant Pot. I'm not sure who's heard about this or saw any articles recently, but the Instant Pot is a slow cooker company that recently went bankrupt, basically because they make they design products too good for our economic system. And I think it really highlights the problem of our economy and where we need to move from and transition to. So the product is designed too well that there's no planned obsolescence in it and there's no need to buy new models. And the company didn't decide to kind of give up on their ethics, and they kept designing good products, but that wasn't a profitable system. And in order to create a profitable system, we need to build in waste into our economic models, and we need to design products that extract more materials and break down quicker. And the quicker they break down, the more money companies can make. And in order to get more products like the Instant Pot, and not just where they last for a long time, but also have products that can be not just owned individually, but shared by communities as well. Things like slow cookers we don't use them every night, and we can share them with people. And the problem is with this model is it's not profitable, but it is sustainable. So that's what we're trying to do with the Glasgow Tool Library. So we're a community library that works like a normal library, but instead of books, you can access equipment for your homes, gardens, and hobbies. We started the project in 2017, but we took a couple of years and opened in the summer of 2019. So we're going for 4 years. Our main location is based in Maryhill, which you can see here, kind of organised chaos. But we also deliver a drop-off and collection service at Kinning Park Complex as well, with an e-cargo bike and trailer. So our aims, our 4 aims, are to promote access of ownership, sharing instead of shopping, to promote a cooperative culture, and tools for resilience. So I'm going to go into these a bit more depth and talk about how we tackle these aims and the kind of impact from them. So our first aim is that we try to save people money and tackle inequality, giving people affordable access to resources and equipment. So we do this by providing affordable membership. We currently have a pay what you can membership, although we're maybe going to have to change it, but we're still going to provide affordable access. So anybody that wants to can become a member and access our 700 and growing items. We have lots of tools, power tools, gardening equipment, but we also have equipment like cameras, we have camping equipment, tents, a pizza oven, a massage table. So the idea is that it's things that they're often quite expensive and things that you wouldn't want to use very often. And yeah, it can help you save money, save space in your house, and also reduce your consumption. So we currently have 620 active members, and we've had over 1,000, I think it's more than 127, but over 1,000 members since we launched in 2019. So the impact of this is that we've loaned over 7,500 items, which has saved people collectively £335,000. And individually, that saves on average each member around about £326. And it's the model where the more you use it, the more you save as well. So we also try to change people's perception of consumerism, reduce waste, and promote sharing as a sustainable alternative to shopping.